Lady Han's heart thudded as the figure stepped closer under the faint glow of a street lantern. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Father?" The mysterious man slowly pulled back his hood, revealing the sharp, familiar features of the kingdom's most elusive and respected seer. His silver-streaked hair shimmered faintly under the light, and his piercing eyes locked onto hers with unsettling calm. "Yes," he said quietly, his tone laced with warning. "What do you think you're doing, daughter of mine?" Lady Han composed herself quickly, masking her shock with a cool expression. "I don't know what you're talking about." Haru tilted his head slightly, unimpressed. "You're planning to tell Jin Suk the truth about Ji Yun, about him being a man. Don't bother denying it." Her breath caught. "How do you?" "I'm not the kingdom's greatest seer for nothing," Haru replied, his voice sharp and certain. "You forget who I am." Lady Han frowned but kept her voice even. "Remember, you have no right to interfere in others' lives. I'm doing what I must for my daughter's future. Min Seo deserves to be queen, and Ji Yun is in the way." Haru sighed, a flicker of sadness passing through his eyes. "You say you're doing this for her, but you're only feeding your own ambition. You've built a life chasing power for a girl who will never acknowledge you as her mother." That struck deep. Lady Han's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing. "That's not true." "It is," Haru said gently but firmly. "She doesn't know who you truly are, and even if she did, would she accept you? She won't. You're hurting her more than helping." Lady Han stood still, his words sinking like cold rain through her layers of pride. "Tell Jin Suk," Haru continued, "and you will set off a chain of events you cannot undo. The truth always comes out, but how and when, matters. If you force it now, it will destroy more than just Ji Yun. It will destroy everything." He took a step back into the shadows, his expression unreadable. "The choice is yours, go if you must. But know that every action has a consequence." And with that, he turned and disappeared into the dark, his cloak melting into the alley as though he had never been there at all. Lady Han stood motionless for a long moment. Her chest rose and fell with shallow, conflicted breaths. She stared in the direction Haru had vanished, the weight of his words settling heavily on her shoulders. After what felt like forever, she turned around, and walked away. In the quiet guest quarters tucked behind the main palace hall, Ji Yun led Sunhi carefully inside, her weak steps barely keeping up with his pace. Inside the room, Kyung Hoon stood with arms crossed, leaning against a pillar. Min Suk was seated nearby, watching cautiously. The moment Sunhi stepped in, she let out a dramatic sigh, flopping down onto a cushioned stool. Finally, she groaned, stretching her arms. "Do you know how long I've been in that place? It was freezing, and the food. You're lucky Ji Yun still has a heart," Kyung Hoon cut in coldly. "If it were up to me, you'd still be rotting in there." Sunhi blinked, then looked down, the sharpness in her voice fading. "I know. I messed up. I betrayed someone who treated me like a sister." Her voice cracked as she added, "And for what? A family that abandoned me the moment I was no longer useful. Not one of them came to see me. Not once." Ji Yun gave her a long, unreadable look. After a pause, he turned to one of the maids. "Draw her a bath. And bring her fresh clothes." Sunhi's eyes widened, surprised by his kindness, and she nodded gratefully. "Thank you." After a while, the door opened and Sunhi stepped back into the room, dressed in a pale pink hanbok. Her face was clean, her hair washed and plaited. She looked like a completely different person, fragile but glowing. Min Suk, who had been sipping tea, nearly choked on it when he looked up. His eyes followed her with stunned silence. Kyung Hoon arched a brow, giving Min Suk a knowing look. "Wipe that expression off your face. You're drooling." Min Suk blinked, startled. "I wasn't. I mean, I was just surprised. She looked like a ghost before." Ji-yun gave a faint smile before motioning the maids to bring food. Sunhi ate hungrily, her hands shaking slightly from hunger but her manners intact. When the plates were cleared, she sat back, satisfied, and looked around the room. "Can we have a moment alone?" she asked softly. Kyung-hoon nodded. The maids bowed and exited quietly, closing the doors behind them, leaving only the four of them, Ji-yun, Kyung-hoon, Min-suk, and Sunhi. Sunhi folded her hands in her lap. "The night the assassins died. I was there. My cell was next to theirs. At the time, I was asleep, but something woke me. Footsteps, very light ones. I turned and saw someone entering their cell, hooded." Ji-yun leaned forward slightly. "Did you see their face?" Sunhi hesitated, then nodded. "At first, no. But I had a bad feeling, so I kept watching. When the figure turned just slightly, maybe to check if they were being followed, I caught a glimpse of her face." "Who was it?" Kyung-hoon asked, his tone sharp. Sunhi looked up at them, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was Lady Han." The room fell into stunned silence. Kyung-hoon straightened, his expression shifting from shock to grim certainty. "I knew something wasn't right with her," he muttered. "She's always had this shadowy way of moving, always trying to play the perfect court lady. But she's clever, too clever." Min-suk frowned, folding his arms. Why would she poison the assassins? What was she trying to cover up? Ji-yun exchanged a glance with Kyung-hoon, then murmured, "She's working with Jin-suk." "But why?" Sunhi asked, looking between them. "That's what we need to find out," Kyung-hoon said, his voice sharp with purpose. "She's hiding something. There's a deeper connection between her and Jin-suk. We'll keep watching her, closely." Kyung-hoon turned to Min-suk. "Let's go. We need to quietly keep an eye on Lady Han without drawing attention." Min-suk gave Ji-yun and Sunhi a parting nod before following Kyung-hoon out the door. Once they were gone, Sunhi leaned back with a soft smile and looked at Ji-yun, her tone suddenly gentle. "You know, congratulations." Ji-yun blinked. "For what?" "For becoming crown princess," she said, grinning. "Even if everything feels chaotic now, you made it." Ji-yun chuckled dryly, unsure of what to say. Sunhi tilted her head. "I mean it. I know I betrayed you before, but I'll never do that again. If it comes down to it, I'll protect you, even if it costs me my life." Ji-yun's expression tensed. "Don't say that so lightly." "I'm not." She looked at him intently. "I owe you more than you know." Before Ji-yun could respond, Sunhi added, "Besides. I know." Ji-yun's brows drew together. "Know what?" "That you're a man." Ji-yun froze. Sunhi smirked softly, her voice low and playful. "I suspected it during the competition. You were so private, so careful. The way you avoided communal baths. It made me wonder. I kept it to myself." "Why didn't you say anything?" Ji-yun asked cautiously, genuinely surprised. "I could have told Min-seo, and believe me, I thought about it. But I didn't. Because I cared about you. You were different. Kind. I thought, if this person is willing to go through all this for something, there must be a reason." Ji-yun's eyes softened, clearly moved. Sunhi leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "Does the crown prince know?" Ji-yun nodded slowly. "He's known for a while now." Sunhi's eyes widened in delight. "Oh my goodness, that's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. He knew, and he still chose you. You're living in a palace drama." Ji-yun gave a small, surprised laugh despite himself. "Sunhi said. Tell me everything. You can unburden to me. I can see in your eyes that you've been carrying so much. You have me to talk to now." He hesitated, then smiled softly. Okay, but you can't interrupt. No promises, she said with a playful grin, moving to the bed and pulling a blanket around her shoulders and settling in. And just like that, the two former friends, once torn apart by betrayal and pain, sat by the lantern light, talking into the night. Ji-yun finally opened up, letting pieces of his truth slip out, and Sunhi listened. That night, the moonlight filtered softly through the paper-paneled windows of Dae-hyun and Soo-ji's room. The household had long gone quiet, but inside the room, tension hung in the air. Dae-hyun was already changing into his sleep clothes when he noticed Soo-ji sitting at the edge of the bed, her back stiff and her eyes distant. He frowned. Soo-ji, what's wrong? You've been restless all evening. She jolted slightly at the sound of his voice, then forced a small smile. It's nothing, she muttered, fiddling with the hem of her robe. Soo-ji, Dae-hyun said more firmly, turning to face her. You've been sighing and pacing. Did something happen? She shook her head quickly. It's nothing serious. Just tired, that's all. Really? Dae-hyun didn't believe her, but he was too exhausted to press further. All right, he said softly. Come to bed. As he lay down and drifted off to sleep, Soo-ji remained seated, staring at the wall. Her hands trembled in her lap. Please, let this end quietly. Let him never find out I was the one who told Lady Han. The next morning, as Min-suk and Jun-ho tightened their belts and adjusted their outer robes near the door, Soo-ji approached them, trying to sound casual. Are there any strange rumors going around the palace? She asked. Min-suk and Jun-ho exchanged glances. No, not really, Min-suk replied, his tone light. Why? Soo-ji laughed nervously. Just curious. You both work in the palace. I thought you might have heard something. Jun-ho raised a brow but shrugged. Everything's been normal, mother. With that, they bid her goodbye and stepped out, leaving her heart racing. 2 weeks later. The air was abuzz with celebration as a royal proclamation rang through the streets. The royal family is pleased to announce the official wedding of Crown Prince Kyung-hoon and Lady Jeolmi, winner of the Crown Princess contest, taking place tomorrow at dawn. Inside the house, the news arrived like a bolt of lightning. Soo-ji stood frozen by the doorway, the scroll shaking in her hand. What? She muttered, her voice barely audible. But I told Lady Han the truth. That Ji-yun is a man. How could they still be getting married? Silence fell. She didn't realize what she had said, until she saw the stunned faces of her family in the living room. Dae-hyun, who had been sipping tea at the table, slowly placed the cup down. What did you just say? Her face paled. I didn't mean. You told Lady Han. Dae-hyun's voice dropped to a disbelieving whisper. You told her Ji-yun's secret. You exposed him. I was only trying to protect our family. Soo-ji said defensively. I couldn't just watch Ji-yun deceive the royal. No. Dae-hyun's voice boomed through the room as he stood abruptly. You did this out of bitterness and pride. Because things didn't work out the way you wanted. You've created problems that could lead to chaos in the palace. Soo-ji's lips trembled. But I've endured your jealousy and manipulations for years, Soo-ji. I kept quiet for the sake of this household. But this, he shook his head in fury. This is too far. Dae-hyun, please. Get out, he said flatly. I don't want to see you. She turned to her sons, desperate. Min-suk. Jun-ho. Say something. Your father wants to chase me out of the house. But Min-suk looked away in disappointment. You crossed the line, mother. Jun-ho added quietly, it wasn't your place. You don't realize how complicated the situation is. What's involved is a lot more than you know. You may just have endangered the lives of so many people. Tears welled in Suji's eyes. But You should go. Let father cool off. Maybe later we'll talk, Min Suk said firmly. Without another word, they walked out, the door shutting quietly behind them. Suji stood alone in the middle of the room, her shoulders trembling as the weight of what she'd done came crashing down. Her hands covered her face as she collapsed to her knees, the scroll falling beside her. The room now echoed with silence, and regret. Outside the gate, a warm breeze stirred the early morning leaves as Dae-hyun stepped out, the frustration from his earlier confrontation still clouding his thoughts. Just then, a familiar voice called out from the side of the road. Dae-hyun. Dae-hyun turned to see Sunmin approaching, his brows furrowed slightly. You look like a storm just passed through your house, Sunmin said dryly. What happened? Dae-hyun sighed, shaking his head. It's nothing you need to worry about. Sunmin narrowed his eyes. Dae-hyun. Dae-hyun hesitated before saying quietly, I've decided to divorce Suji. That made Sunmin pause mid-step. Divorce her, he repeated, incredulous. Why? She did something terrible, Dae-hyun replied, his jaw tight. Something I can't ignore. I've turned a blind eye to her ways for years, but this? I can't forgive it. Sunmin stared at him, searching his face, but Dae-hyun didn't elaborate. He exhaled slowly and rubbed the back of his neck. Anyway, Dae-hyun added, clearly wanting to shift the subject, your son's wedding is tomorrow. How do you feel about that? A flicker of something unreadable passed across Sunmin's face. How do I feel, he muttered, his tone cool. Does it even matter? Whether I'm overjoyed or furious. I'm still his father. I'll show up, smile for the crowd, play my part. That's all. Dae-hyun frowned. Sunmin. But before he could say anything else, Sunmin suddenly staggered, one hand flying to his temple, the other reaching blindly for support. Sunmin. Dae-hyun rushed forward and caught him just in time before he slumped to the side. Sunmin leaned heavily into him, his breathing ragged. It's fine. I just got a little dizzy, he mumbled. You're burning up, Dae-hyun said, alarmed. How long have you been like this? It's been happening recently, Sunmin admitted, his voice weak. It's not good. I know. Damn it, Sunmin, Dae-hyun muttered as he carefully supported him. You're so busy chasing revenge on the royal family, you don't even think about your own body. Sunmin said nothing. Come on, Dae-hyun said, tightening his grip. Let's get you inside before you collapse for real. And slowly, he helped his old friend into the house. Inside a dimly lit chamber deep within the palace walls, the air was thick with the weight of secrets and tension. King Jang sat at the head of the low table, cloaked in his royal robes, though the fatigue in his eyes gave away just how long he'd been carrying the burden of the throne. Beside him sat Crown Prince Kyung-hoon, sharp-eyed and resolute, along with a few trusted officials whose loyalty had been tested and proven over the years. A senior official leaned forward and whispered urgently, Your Majesty, it's worse than we thought. Jin Suk's influence runs deep. Servants, guards, minor court officials, some of them are reporting directly to him. It's as though he has the palace under his thumb. Another added, if he catches wind of the abdication before it happens, he could stir dissent. We must proceed swiftly and precisely. King Jang nodded, rubbing his temple. That's why the timing of the abdication must be perfect. We'll announce it during Kyung-hoon's wedding ceremony, when everyone least expects it. It will throw off Jin Suk's balance. Some members of the court will resist, one minister said gravely. But if we already have the support of the military and half the council, then the rest will follow, Kyung-hoon finished confidently. King Jang looked at his son with a flicker of pride. I must thank you, Kyung-hoon, for taking on this burden. After everything. But Kyung-hoon's eyes were cold as they met his father's. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you, he said bluntly. I'm doing it for the people who have suffered long enough under you, and under Jin Suk's shadow. There was a tense silence in the room. Kyung-hoon rose to his feet. Watch carefully, father. Watch how I rule this kingdom the way it should have been ruled. Without waiting for a response, he turned and strode out of the room, the doors closing quietly behind him. Outside, in the shaded corridor, Min Suk was pacing nervously when Kyung-hoon appeared. He straightened immediately and bowed slightly. Your Highness, Min Suk said quickly. I have something to confess. Kyung-hoon paused and glanced at him. My mother, it turns out she was the one who exposed Ji-yun, Min Suk admitted, shame painting his features. That's how the queen found out. I'm so sorry. I didn't know until recently. But Kyung-hoon merely shook his head, his tone calm but firm. It doesn't matter anymore, Min Suk. That's not what we should be focused on right now. Min Suk looked surprised but relieved, following as Kyung-hoon continued down the corridor. What I need to know, Kyung-hoon said, his voice dropping slightly, is if Lady Han has made any moves recently. Min Suk shook his head. No. She's been unusually quiet. Kyung-hoon nodded slowly. Stay alert. If she makes even the slightest move. I want to know. Yes, Your Highness. That night, under the soft golden glow of lantern light, Kyung-hoon lay beside Ji-yun on their bed, the silence between them filled with unspoken thoughts. Ji-yun's head rested lightly on Kyung-hoon's shoulder, but his fingers absent-mindedly played with the edge of the blanket, sensing the tension in Kyung-hoon's body. After a while, Kyung-hoon spoke quietly, Ji-yun, tomorrow, I become king. Ji-yun blinked, slowly lifting his head to look at him. So it really is happening? Kyung-hoon gave a faint smile. Yes. Father plans to abdicate during the wedding ceremony. It'll be a surprise to everyone. Ji-yun sat up slightly, anxiety creeping in. I'm going to become queen. Kyung-hoon's smile faded. Once I become king, everything changes. There will be danger. For me, for you. Jin Suk won't sit still. There might be people, maybe even ones close to us, who will try to stop it from happening. I don't know what could happen tomorrow, but if anything does, he paused, taking Ji-yun's hand. You must be strong. If I fall, you take the mantle. You carry the flame forward. Ji-yun immediately shook his head, tightening his grip on Kyung-hoon's hand. Don't say that. Don't talk like something will happen to you. That's terrifying. Kyung-hoon exhaled softly. It's a possibility. And I need you to be ready. Ji-yun didn't respond, just stared at him with wide, worried eyes. Kyung-hoon gently reached up, brushing a strand of hair from Ji-yun's face. And one more thing, he added, his tone now sharp and serious. Don't eat anything or drink anything tomorrow. Nothing. Even if it looks safe. They may try to poison you. Ji-yun's breath hitched, then he nodded slowly. I promise. I'll be careful. Kyung-hoon nodded, pulling him close again. Good. Just stay by my side. They stayed in silence for a while after that, hearts heavy, fingers interlaced, knowing that tomorrow would change everything. The next morning, the palace was alive with splendor. Sunlight bathed the white marble in gold, silk banners fluttered with the wind, and vibrant blossoms decorated every inch of the grand courtyards. The air buzzed with excitement, nobles and royals arriving from near and far to witness the royal wedding. In Min Seo's chamber, the maids fussed around her, adjusting her robes and fixing her hair. But her face looked pale, her hands slightly trembling. Lady Han, watching her closely, walked over. Min Seo, are you alright? Min Seo gave a weak smile. I just feel like I have indigestion. I have not been feeling so well. Lady Han waved a hand dismissively. Nerves. Completely normal. It'll pass once everything begins. But behind her words, her eyes were calculating. Meanwhile, at Ji Yun's quarters, Sunhi clapped her hands to her mouth the moment Ji Yun stepped out in his completed wedding attire. By the gods, Ji Yun, she gasped, circling him. You don't just look beautiful, you look heavenly. Ji Yun offered a nervous smile, adjusting the elegant robes and picking up the delicate royal fan that completed the look. I feel like I can't breathe in this thing. Just then, a group of palace maids entered, carrying trays of food and drinks. Their voices were cheerful, but Ji Yun stepped back. No, thank you, he said firmly. Sunhi raised a brow. Aren't you hungry? Before he could answer, Lady Han entered the room, her expression cool and proud. Her eyes briefly scanned Ji Yun from head to toe, and though her words held contempt, the flicker of surprise in her gaze betrayed her true thoughts. Well, she said slowly, folding her arms, I must admit, you clean up better than I expected. Ji Yun gave her a polite nod. Thank you, my lady. She glanced at the untouched food. Not eating. You have a long day ahead. Wouldn't want you fainting during the ceremony. Ji Yun met her gaze without blinking. I'm not hungry. Their eyes locked for a tense beat, but eventually, Lady Han gave a slight scoff. Very well. Come along. It's time. As Ji Yun took a deep breath and picked up his royal fan, he paused at the doorway. He looked back once, at the clothes, the room, the old life he was leaving behind, and then stepped forward into a new one. Thanks for watching. Do like and subscribe to the channel for more episodes.